I'll be talking about hackers, bots, and fake news with blogger and internet activist Markus Beckedahl, and whether it's possible that the German election could be decided by Vladimir Putin. Mr. Beckedahl, welcome to the DW interview.
Good afternoon.
And I'm glad you could join us, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Thomas Spahn. Mr. Beckedahl, there was massive manipulation of the elections in the US and France, possibly originating in Russia. And the German government says the German election is safe. And we can rest assured nothing will happen. Is that fake news?
Well, at least the assurance to the public that they seem to have everything under control is a bit surprising. Especially since all last year, quite a lot of panic was created, fabricated, and rather the opposite was communicated to the public. Even if the danger from Russian hackers is played down now, it doesn't mean all our infrastructure has become totally safe. That's a long process.
I think the only thing that's totally safe after the massive attempts we've seen is the assumption that they'll very probably try again.
That's what everyone says. And history also shows that there have always been foreign interests that have tried to influence other states, other governments, and other countries' elections. So far, in this election process, I haven't seen any attempts at influence on the scale that was predicted with such scare tactics for a whole year.
The German Bundestag has already experienced a massive hacker attack, and it took German democracy offline for days. What did we learn from that?
I'm afraid we learned that the German Bundestag had a very bad IT security strategy, that they'd made very little effort to guarantee the greatest possible security, and that many representatives had failed to improve their security for the sake of convenience. And it turned out the attackers, or at least a group of attackers, took advantage of that. Analyses indicated that it might have been Russian hackers, the APT-28 group. These indications were drawn from analyzing the source codes, or the programming codes of the Trojan software. And evidence was found of Russian working hours, or Russian work days, and of the occasional Cyrillic letter.
But that's fairly weak evidence.
Yes, that's a problem. Attribution, or unmistakably clear traceability. If, let's say, I were an American hacker spy and I wanted to hack my friends in Germany, I would make every effort to make it look like it wasn't friends but somebody else.
So anyone who really wants to can influence things, like, for example, manipulate the vote count on election day, September the 24th?
Well, the Federal Election Commissioner says the infrastructure is secure. But we can't be certain the infrastructure at the municipal level might not be quite as secure as at the federal level, but at least we can say we're lucky Germany doesn't have computer voting. If we had this so-called e-voting, online voting, if we voted over the computer like in other countries, we would be more likely to see manipulation happening than with paper-based voting, because that's tried and tested. It can be monitored. It's not so easy to manipulate, and by sticking with this, we'll hopefully be better off in future.
Could then interconnected computers with certain tasks, or what they call bots, decisively influence an election's outcome? Or is the danger not that great?
We've heard warnings about that quite often over the last year. Warnings that automated propaganda spread by bots could massively influence public opinion going into the national election. And we've already said there's been little indication of that. In other words, it was a kind of mass hysteria here, and now, 2 weeks before Election Day, I can tell you that the armies of bots we were promised seem to be more active in other countries.
But let's say the day of the national election, a news item starts circulating on the internet about an internal calculation by the finance ministry that the costs for refugees are not 35 billion euros annually, but 70 billion. Wouldn't that benefit the far right?
At
the moment, false reports like that are coming out almost daily, and they're very popular and get shared, above all, on right-wing networks. But I don't believe a document like that could have any massive influence on Election Day, because most voters will have already made their decision before they go to the polling station. Still, it's a major challenge, but also a great opportunity for reporters to research these topics and use their contacts in the government to verify the credibility of these reports. We can always find out that way if they're genuine or not. I think the German newsrooms analyzed what they called the Macron leaks in the French election very carefully and prepared themselves to deal with such things in the German election, and I have utmost confidence in them.
Let's talk about a danger that hasn't gotten a lot of attention yet. Facebook now has some 30 million members in Germany. They get news feeds sorted by logarithms and algorithms that we don't understand. Is there a danger in that?
For the first time, we're facing a danger in that we as a society are becoming increasingly dependent on monopolistic structures like Facebook. Another question would be, does Facebook now have the power to manipulate elections using all the data it collects everywhere from its users? For example, by giving people in hotly contested electoral districts more negative news about the Social Democrats and showing more untransparent positive news about the Christian Democrats. That's an enormous challenge for our democracy.
And so far, nobody can keep track of this.
Right now, nobody can keep track of it. So it's good that we're debating how we can achieve accountability, democratic checks, and what institutions we need to do that. I don't think we should just accept the idea that Facebook has this power over our society, may use it in the future, and we can't do anything about it.
Let's talk a little about you personally. Some time ago, you became the subject of an investigation into allegations of possible treason because you had published highly confidential intelligence service papers. But the matter was dropped and you were cleared of suspicion. Could anything better have happened to spread the word about you and your work?
Yes, on the one hand, of course, it was a kind of badge of honor that the government and our security agencies got out the big guns. They were threatening us with 2 years in prison. The situation was just so surreal to us. We'd only ever heard of that happening with repressive regimes. We didn't even think it was possible in Germany to be threatened with imprisonment for our work as journalists with investigative reporting. On the other hand, I had half a mind to drop the whole matter because of the massive pressure. Try explaining to your mother, who's just heard on the news that her son might be facing prison, that she can rest easy now. She couldn't sleep for a long time. And now I have the feeling that the stigma remains of having been suspected of treason and been investigated. Of course, that doesn't go down well everywhere. People think if you've been investigated, there must have been something to it, because they don't do that for nothing.
Speaking of stigma, you're on the internet almost daily. You're at home there and have a footprint, but virtually nothing of your private life can be found. How do you do that?
By going online very consciously. I've learned how to cover up my data tracks, which can often take some effort. And of course you have to give up a certain quality of life that others take for granted. I'd like to talk about lots of hobbies and interests of mine with other people who might share exactly the same ones. And for that, you have to open up. But as a public person, I've decided for me personally to advertise as little as possible about myself as a private person. And that served me very well. And I feel quite satisfied with it.
In der Öffentlichkeit kundtun möchte und fahre damit eigentlich ganz gut und fühle mich auch ganz zufrieden.
Is your mother still afraid you might end up in prison?
I don't think she is now. I think after about 2 weeks she was able to sleep through the night again, and then the case was closed.
Mr. Beckedahl, to wind up our interview, I'd like to give you 3 unfinished sentences and ask you to complete them. Without the Internet, I would be...
Ohne Internet wäre ich...
My life would have gone very differently. I'm very glad the Internet entered my life when it did.
The fact that German mobile Internet service is worse than in Romania and Kazakhstan, I think is...
I think is an admission of failure. If you travel 5 kilometers in almost any direction outside of Berlin, you're stuck in a dead spot. For all the industrialized members of the European Union, it's an admission of failure and makes you wonder who's responsible and who's been governing us the past few years.
In the Internet age, protecting democracy means...
that our basic rights online and offline have to be defended over and over, and ideally they should be expanded.
Markus Beckedahl, many thanks.
Thank you.